Thank you, Nancy. You know, have you heard of that book written by Eugene Peterson, A Long Obedience in the Same Direction? Have you heard of that? In it, he studies the Psalms of Ascent. Those are Psalms 120 to 134. And these are basically pilgrimage psalms of going back to Jerusalem for the high holy days. And so, Nancy, who read that passage I offered up, is the Torah prescription for what faithful Jewish men are to do on the three major festivals. First one is Passover, the second one is Shavuot, what we would call Passover, and the third is Weeks or Tabernacle. Three pilgrimage festivals in the Jewish tradition. Goes all the way back. Actually, it goes back to Exodus 24, and then a retelling of it here in Deuteronomy 16. So I talk about this because I think that there's a connection between Stations of the Cross and a Torah edict from long ago. The song that I asked Judy to play and us to sing is a song, a hymn of ascent. I looked all the way through Glory to God. I probably should have asked you, Rebecca, to see if there are any really good hymns of ascent having to do with the Psalms in question, 120 to 134. I looked and I didn't see any of them were as good as this one, which I'm familiar with, and it's obviously about going back to Jerusalem. Oftentimes it's sung at Advent, but also speaks of the triumphal entry into Jerusalem of Jesus. If you look at the small words in Glory to God, you will see that. Pilgrimage is meant to be a metaphor for the upward, consistent, and intentional life of faith, focusing on discipleship, worship, community. And as you know, Jews today still make pilgrimage. Not all of them, but many of them. And so I think, sorry, this is not working. There we go. When Jesus came to Jerusalem on what we call Palm Sunday, what was he actually doing? Well, he had his intentions, but he was making pilgrimage for Passover. And you'll recall that in that, they waved palms. Some of the crowd said, "He's the son of David," which are troublesome words on the wrong ears. And you know how that pilgrimage, making good on Torah edicts, turned out. There it is. It didn't turn out spectacularly well for him, did it? Right, no. Well, he knew that he was going to Jerusalem. He set his face, according to Luke. But what we know is that he understood the risks for the longest time. He'd been skirting the power centers, and this time he took it right to them. So I literally make this connection between the Torah edict that Jewish men must go to Jerusalem and tithe, a tithe of gratitude for those high holy days. And Jesus, faithful Jewish man that he was, went. Whether the events of Holy Week were foreordained, or if it was just a confluence of misfortune, it turns out that Jesus is the first one to walk the Via Dolorosa, the way of sorrows, and the other phrase for it is stations of the cross. So we're going to take a look at the history of Stations of the Cross beyond what I'm saying here. Here you'll see this is the very beginning of it. It is chiseled into the Jerusalem stone in the old city of Jerusalem, Via Dolorosa. And here is what the Biblical Archaeology Society says about it. The Via Dolorosa, the Christian processional path in Jerusalem's old city. They're not making any claims about it, they're just stating what it is. Many make pilgrimage to sacred sites. They do it to rekindle faith, make the lives of important people in faith history palpable, real, to be strengthened by considering the actual happenings that formed our faith, not just words on pages, not just ethereal thoughts, but real actions and real people and consequences. We're going to take a look at some more. Okay, so this is a picture, a drawing of the old city at the time, shortly before 66 AD, when its destruction began. And on it is transposed the way of the cross, the Via Dolorosa. Now, of course, history has, there are contentions about which was the first place, which was the second, and did it happen here or did it happen there? But this one is the current traditional site. It begins, you see number one, the station number one, and that is coming out of a structure right there which is known as the Fortress Antonia. The Fortress Antonia was built by Herod along with the temple, Herod the Great. He named it Antonia after Mark Antony, his patron. And it was the place that Roman soldiers could stay perched and look out over the goings and the comings and the doings of the great temple and parachute in if they needed to really quickly. So the idea is that he left after his verdict from Pilate from the Fortress Antonia and made his way, and there are the rest of them. Notice that it comes out what seems to be the gate, and it was the gate of the time of Jesus was right there. And Golgotha, scholars, archaeologists are fairly certain that that is where Golgotha was. It is now the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, built originally by Helena, Constantine's mother, and then, of course, refurbished and redone by Crusaders and others after them. But inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the last 5 stations occur. So they're all within that large complex. And, of course, now, 1,000 years after this, the wall became expanded and included then this area of Golgotha, now a church complex and everything else. Pilgrimage to the Holy Land has a long history, and I'm going to do it briefly. The first recorded Christian pilgrim to the Holy Land was a bishop named Mileto, who hailed from Sardis in Asia Minor, Western Turkey. His journey occurred around 160 CE. So it was very early that European-type Christians came and visited the holy sites. Eusebius, writing in the 4th century, shared that Mileto visited those locales where the scriptures had been preached and fulfilled. So this is a reference to, in the 4th century, when Constantine has legalized Christianity, sent his mother Helena, who asked all the locals where the traditional sites of Jesus' ministries were, and venerated them, typically with some kind of a religious structure over the top of them. So when Eusebius writes that and where the scriptures had been preached and fulfilled, we can assume that it was broader than just Jerusalem, all the different sites in the Holy Land where Jesus' ministry was performed, and that is the case. But the first documented pilgrimage to walk Jesus' passion in Jerusalem, which is another name for the Via Dolorosa, began with early Christians in the 4th century as described in the travelogue of Egregia. Now, that's a big name in Christian history. She factors prominently in it at that time as being someone who wrote down in detail what she saw on her visits to the Holy Land. So we know that by the 4th century, Christians from Europe, are making pilgrimage and walking the Via Dolorosa. So Jerusalem, over time, if you think Constantine's reign or the Roman Church reign ended in the 600 CE, the Muslims then controlled the Holy Land. So after the Islamic conquest in 636, it became a dangerous proposition to go from a European locale, or any locale, as Christians, down to the Holy Land for pilgrimage. Whoops. And that lasted for about 500 years, and then the Europeans and Rome decided that, no, Christians need to control the Holy Land. And so I think it was, I'm going to say it's Pius II issued the first crusade, and it was actually a crusade to recapture Jerusalem, and he referred to it as a peregrinatio, which is Latin for a pilgrimage. It turns out it was an armed pilgrimage, taking pilgrims down there and also keeping them safe. So you remember some holy military orders in the Crusades. The Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitaller were funded to protect pilgrims going down to the Holy Land to make pilgrimage, an armed pilgrimage. And despite the intense military conflict of the Crusades, Islamic rulers subsequently generally permitted Christian pilgrims to visit holy sites, often in exchange for taxes and fees. You know, the holy sites do cost us something. When you go, it's not a great deal of money, but that's pretty much going into the Franciscan coffers these days. By the 15th century, Franciscan friars began erecting series of outdoor shrines throughout Europe to duplicate the Via Dolorosa. So even though the land is now in Muslim hands, they decided a less dangerous thing to do would be to start to establish these replicas of the Stations of the Cross on church grounds of churches in Europe. And that started around the 15th century. You can see some of them here. You know, oddly, the ones that have their names, you know, are licensable. So I didn't purchase those, but you can see what these old outdoor stations look like on church properties in Europe. There's another one. This one is actually in a cathedral in Cologne. It's an outdoor frieze. This one is right up here in Sierra Madre at Mato Dolorosa Passionist Retreat, an outdoor Stations of the Cross. And this one too is up in Sierra Madre. And in the 17th century, Innocent allowed the orders to place stations within their monasteries. For the first time, people were praying inside a church and walking around to visit the stations inside the church property. You'll never guess where this one is. This one is in Pittsburgh. Can't remember the name of the church, but there you have it, indoor Stations of the Cross. This one is St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. This year, they're refurbishing all their indoor Stations of the Cross, and this is one that has just been remastered by a prominent painter. So, I mean, I guess this is probably what you really want to know. Why walk the Stations of the Cross? Who's walked them before? Anyone? 1, 2, 3. Oh, well, there's a few, right? I've been to the Holy Land twice, and in neither time did I walk the Stations of the Cross. I didn't really know about them very much, although I saw the emblems there. And the thing that struck me is even though you see these Stations of the Cross on the Via Dolorosa, they're all done nice brass numbering and such. They don't really talk about, they have some kind of a brass relief expressing that station. It is so interesting to see that just sort of interwoven with the, the sort of the flotsam and jitsam of tourist consumerism. Everything's being sold at the same time as you're walking down these sites, and it has a tendency to lower your threshold for what is sacred and what is profane. So that's what, I mean, when you go to the Holy Lands, you get a sense of that. There's just so much tourism going on at the same time. So why walk them? The Wellness Committee, your Wellness Committee, has a tendency to try to sort of juxtapose opportunities for physical activity with a season. And so what we did is we said, hey, how about Stations of the Cross and a physical activity? So we worked with the maintenance guys who refurbished the white arrows around campus that shows the half-mile track around the property. And now we are embarking on putting in stations, all 14 of them. They're going to be about yay tall, so no one has to bend down to see them. They'll be there. They will have little meditations on them. You can take one off and maybe find a seat to sit down and have a look-see, or not. You can just breeze around and maybe do that second time around and make it a whole mile. So the reason, honestly, why we're doing Stations of the Cross is to uplift the importance of using our bodies as much as we can. But on the other side, we do come from a faith tradition where real things happened to real people. And real people made hard decisions and assumed a lot of risk for really humanity, for the salvation of us all. No one in this room would be sitting here if Jesus hadn't decided to go in on Palm Sunday that day. So my point is why walk Stations of the Cross is to give us a tangible connection to those very ancient events that cost people dearly, and see if that doesn't revive our sense of Christian courage, for one, rededicate ourselves, not so much to the airy-fairy orthodoxy, the words on pages, but a little bit more to the orthopraxy, what we should be doing in the world to bring God's vision to life. I think of all, John, the Gospel of John says it the best, and I don't know that we always hear it. For God so loved the world that he was willing to give up his only begotten Son. That's how much God loves the world. And I suggest that we should love it too, the way God loves it, and see if we can't reify these traditions of following Jesus in the real concrete ways that he made a difference. Now, I don't know if half the room or all of the room sees this whole event on Good Friday as, you know, the necessary sacrifice for our salvation. That's one. Or you might see, you know, someone assuming risk for doing what he feels is right. However you see it, the outcome is the same. But something very real and tangible happened to Jesus of Nazareth. So I suggest the reason we look at Stations of the Cross, imagine ourselves in this horrible predicament. Of course, the pain, the sorrow, the knowing that this relatively young life is going to flame out. And we say collectively, he did that for us. We also say that he died for the sins of the world. And I think it's correct that if we were a different kind of creature, that we collectively would not create a world where that happens. So yes, we all play a part in that, in the death of Jesus. So, I'm going to show you something. There are lots of people I know who have walked certain pilgrimages. Nancy, did you know that Jeff and Kim Crandall did Camino de Santiago, and he would message me after every day, 33,000 steps today. I'm praying that God heals my blisters overnight. And he would also say, I'm being changed by doing this. I am seeing the life of Jesus in a different way. Lourdes in France and Fatima in Portugal, these are Marian apparition pilgrimages. My very own Presbyterian pastor from a couple of decades ago went to Lourdes into France and did about 60 miles walk on the Lourdes Trail. So we do them, maybe not all of us, but it's within our tradition. And so you have the opportunity coming soon to walk the Stations of the Cross, and I'm assuming you recognize this map, yes? What's that? Homeland. Oh yeah, okay. I'm going to try to, there it is. I'm going to run back there to the PC, and I'm going to show you how you will go. You will see a little point. So right over here, oops, wait a second. Did you do that? No, I'm kidding. Across from the Commons and across the parking lot is where we charge the EVs. That's where the path starts. And this is the way it goes. There's a little jog across C Street, and we will make use of the ramps to come up. All the way out to just past the Woos. Down, I guess that's A Street, yeah. And then we're going to cut in right after the garages in between A10 and A3, A4, and coming across Ranch House, and that's where it will end. This is not a new path, it's a refurbished path. And it's changed just one iota. The original walked the whole length of the asphalt garages. We thought that wouldn't be as pretty as coming back into the campus where the greenery is. So that's the way it is. We will have these up by Sunday the 15th. And you can start at any point. The first one will be discernible from where you stand at the entrance of that path. If you need a map, there'll be plenty in the Wellness Center. There will be extra meditations in case you want your own set, not just pull the laminated one off, take a look, and put it back. So there's ways to sort of adjust it to your own temperaments. We hope the weather holds. The stations are outdoor stations, so it shouldn't be a problem, not supposed to be a problem. And beyond Stations of the Cross, now I'm really going into advertisement mode here. There is a Maundy Thursday service on Maundy Thursday at 4 p.m., our standard hour. We also hope to employ the wood shop, whom they've already said they will do it, to make us a cross. We will have that cross here for the Maundy Thursday service, happens right here. And it gives you an opportunity to take a little piece of paper, write a sentiment, write a sin, write a regret, and tack it to that cross. And then we're going to transport it over to the new chapel. Depending on its state of newness, we'll either put it inside the chapel and leave it open for you to spend some time with that cross, or we will raise it in the very spacious porch that is on A10. We'll probably run that through Holy Week and take it away. Well, we'll take it away Sunday morning. Okay, so that's a couple of things, a couple other ways. You'll hear more about that in Minders, that you might be able to try to experience the reality of that fateful week, the last week in Jesus' life. Oh, let me go back there and I'll show you. So, Alan, it's right here. Can you see that where I put the red dot? Don Maddox's former residence. It's being repurposed. Yes, Tom.
When will it be
open? They will be up by the 15th of, oh wait. Oh, if we get to go inside, the porch is available 24/7. It's not blocked out. Now, if we are going to go into the new chapel, it has been approved that the staff would open the chapel in the early morning hours like they do Wellness Center and everything else around here. And then some of the team will take responsibility for closing it at night, 10-ish, 11-ish, because there are times when we want to spend some quiet, holy time at night, yes? And that is the purpose of the chapel. It is for you to have a place where you can go and get some quiet, holy. Similar to, we've all been inside the chapel of a hospital, right? The chapels are this big. They generally have lovely stained glass windows. But what they have, I find, an enormous amount of is holy quiet. So if you're the kind of person that likes holy quiet, this chapel will be for you. We will also use it for special services. We may offer it up to pastors in the area in case they need a little place like this for something. We hope to have a good time, but it is for you. I'm going to continue to have my office at the Wellness Center, or else I'll be marooned over there. And I wouldn't have to come in at all, actually, because you wouldn't notice. Right? Questions? I'm gonna wait. Okay, just a second, Larry. I'm gonna add. I have heard it said that Christians are both they're discipled to the Master, Messiah Jesus. So they're learning how to be in the world. But they're also pilgrims, meaning that we're moving somewhere. We say we know this is not our home. Our home is somewhere else. So wandering and pilgrimaging is something we do. There we go. Thank you, Standy. So please enjoy the Stations of the Cross. Do them fast. Wellness Center would rather you keep the cardio level up. But meditative walking slows you down and lets you think. By the way, if you know your house is along that route, I'm going to be looking for volunteers who might say, hey, I've got this bench right here. You can use that as a way station. Or there's my porch. Yeah, people can sit on my porch while they consider station number 12. So kind of see where you are on there, and if you want to volunteer a piece of your property for something, we would appreciate that. We also know that we've got lots of benches around the campus that we never see anybody on. No one's going to notice if they move for 3 or 4 weeks, and we can always put them back. Okay, Larry.
By the way, our cats will be available for petting at the cul-de-sac on St. Francis occasions. My question is, so I know that there are people here and others that we know who have gone on the pilgrimage in Spain, very famous, the
Compostela.
but this is the first, and it makes perfect sense to me that the Stations of the Cross would be along the way, but that's, 800 or 900 miles, right? So are there 14 particular stations on the pilgrimage in Spain? Or
I don't know. I didn't know there were Stations of the Cross on those pilgrimage areas in France and Spain. I didn't know that. There are, and I don't know that that's the case. No, I'm not. I am talking, they are in Jerusalem, and they are in many European cathedrals, either on the property or inside the cathedral. Karen, you want to say that?
Having walked the last 100 kilometers of Camino, there are not specific 14 stations, but you can observe them as you showed them in your photos on the outside.
And are they Stations of the Cross? Okay, so in history, those stations have been all over the place in terms of what they depict and how many there are. But the standard is the Crusader version, the 12th century version, and we're sticking with it. And those are the ones most readily available to us as well. So there are 14 stations. The last one, Jesus is buried in the tomb. The first one, Jesus is condemned by Pilate. So in between those 2 points.
Yeah, I get that. Every Catholic church you go into today
Probably.
has stations around the
Okay.
interior. But what I was asking is, and that's just the first time I've heard it suggested, that the Camino is about the stations.
I don't know that it is or isn't. Karen says there are stations of the cross on the leg, the 100 kilometers she took. But, oh, not for, necessarily for the Camino.
Yeah.
Okay.
They are. There's probably a lot of them. A lot of churches, each with its 14 stations. Yeah, okay.
Peggy?
Well, I was just gonna say, my daughter walked the entire, Camino, 3 years ago, and that's right. It's not all about stations.
Got it. No.
That's not the, its focus, it's part of what it is.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to ask, are these going to stay up, or are they just gonna be there during Lent?
They're just here for Lent. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry, what?
Just Lent. They'll come down Holy Saturday morning. They no longer have relevance. However, we're leaving the posts up because in the summer, it's the 100-year anniversary of Route 66, and we're going to put famous stops along Route. And if you want to make it a longer trip, we're going to say, if you want to make it a longer, go back to Kansas and come forward again. Pardon me? Well, I'm not all the way back. You can do that. Sure, of course, of course. Questions? Peggy?
I would just like to share some of my experiences with having grown up in it couldn't have been a more Protestant family. A fundamentalist family, actually. In fact, my parents moved from one state to another to get me away from a Catholic boy. So that's, so they were serious about it.
Those were the days.
It was- but anyway, so I've had this conflict and this lack of understanding or appreciation for a lot of those practices. But then when I was in seminary, I was for 2.5 years a resident minister at USF, which is a Jesuit school. And I came to understand a lot. Like one thing was, for example, the crucifix. One night I was having a discussion with a Jesuit when we were solving all the problems of the world. And at the very end, he said, "That's why Christ is still on the cross." And that really gave me pause. Because the crucifix was, oh, no, in my whole life. But that made me, yes, he's risen, but sometimes in our life, we all have our crosses. And so the pilgrimage thing, and also just, I don't, have any of you ever been on the walk to Chimayo in northern New Mexico? Okay, well, there's still, there are these pilgrimages going on in our country today. And during, close to Easter, you will frequently see, especially during Holy Week, people walking all the way from Santa Fe. You see them on the freeway, up to Chimayo, which is up in the mountains of northern New Mexico. And there's a little chapel there that, it's just interesting. It's nothing I would do, but it's, I did do it once. Because I was invited by a penitente to
to a Via Dolorosa walk on Good Friday in a village right outside of Taos. And it was just interesting. I don't feel it made me a better Christian, but it made me a better neighbor.
Oh, that's kind of one and the same, right? So she said, I don't know about the validity of these practices. Of course, you know, you go into the Holy Land, you see lots of stuff, and if you're lucky enough to meet up with the Israeli Antiquities Authority, you get a better appreciation for what's real and what's not. And so there is skeptical provenance everywhere. But the truth of the matter, our ancient story says Jesus was arrested in the garden. He was betrayed, arrested, flogged, and executed. Those things really, really happened according to our story. So that's the provenance we need. When we look at the station that says, you know, Jesus fell again, well, in the gospel telling, I think there's just one. There's three in the Stations of the Cross. It's the reality that this young Jewish man was beaten to within an inch of his life and fell several times carrying a cross. Now, I don't know about you, but I just don't think there's anyone who cannot be moved by really experiencing the pathos of Jesus' final day and what that should mean to our own, not just faith tradition, but faith practice. Other comments or questions? Uh, 15th. It's that Sunday, the 15th. Oh, another advertisement. On the 23rd, here in Marwick, somewhere between 9 and 12, we've got that amount of time reserved. Judy Durf is going to be doing some training on some spirituality practices, silence, the examine, and also meditative walking in preparation for anyone who might want to jump on board that before walking the stations. So there's that coming up too. I don't know yet, Tom. I don't think it's been, 10 to 12 is the time. 10 to 12 on the 23rd. Yes. Yes. Going to give you lots of dinner time left. Oh, you can't get in there yet. Sandy. Yes.
I knew that. I'm sneaking up on old people. Stop it. I just wanted to make a comment. I did a fair amount of reading on pilgrimage some years ago, and yeah, long story. But one of the things I love that folks who write on pilgrimage and is the notion that everything that happens on pilgrimage is part of your pilgrimage, whether you intended it or not. You know, the blisters on the back of your friend's feet, they are part of your pilgrimage. The losing your luggage, if you do, is part of your pilgrimage. The kindness of strangers is part of your pilgrimage. And I just thought, if we're translating that to the pilgrimage that's behind your head right now, I wonder if we say, you know, are squirrels a part of your pilgrimage? Is this blossoming tree speaking to you of the goodness of God? Is the fact that you're hot and you wish you didn't wear that extra sweater part of your pilgrimage. Can you allow not just what you intended and not just what the creators of the half-mile, carefully marked circuit intended, but your own actual lived experience? Could that also be something the Holy Spirit is using to speak to you about a question perhaps you didn't even know you were asking, right? And so I'm just offering up that random thought because I like the notion of pilgrimage, but I particularly like the notion that whether we planned it, crafted it, expected it, or enjoyed it, everything that happens on a pilgrimage is part of the pilgrimage, if you want it to be.
Sure. And also, I will say, no one is going to get terribly fatigued or discomfited in this half-mile stroll. But real pilgrimages do indeed inflict a certain amount of physical pain. And that
Invite you to
is
be out
part
of your
of the
comfort zone.
pilgrimage.
Invite you to be out of
a
your comfort zone in
zone.
a place that you're, not familiar. So. Charlie's suggesting you could do it barefoot.
We could throw nails out there too.
Okay.
We have ways to make this more interesting, Charlie. Oh, you'll know.